God is speaking to us through these events. Something big, something apocalyptic is happening.
All over the planet.
It comes as a consequence of God knocking us down. And that's the way I look at it. As I think that we need to allow God to knock us down so that we don't have to get to a place where we're so lifted up that somebody else has to do it.
It's been called the crossroads of the world, but these days, no one is going anywhere. New York, the center of American culture and commerce.
Even the famously busy Grand Central Station is eerily quiet. During normal times, 750,000 people would pass through here each day.
Italy ordered a national lockdown. 2 days later, the World Health Organization made a rare declaration.
We're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction.
Most governments have decided, for now at least, drastic measures are necessary to save lives, no matter the cost. Many have implemented unprecedented lockdowns to slow the spread of the virus so healthcare systems aren't overwhelmed. Scientists say we're in uncharted territory.
We start with breaking news. A 5.3 magnitude earthquake just hit an area that's just north of Yosemite. Right now, there are no reports of any injuries or damage. Again, a 5.3 magnitude earthquake this morning in Central California. We'll continue to follow this story throughout the morning.
A 5.3 magnitude earthquake hit near the California-Nevada border this morning at 7:36. The epicenter was 31 miles north.
More than a week after the Magna earthquake, aftershocks are still shaking the Salt Lake Valley. Just this morning, there was a pair of magnitude 3 aftershocks. They're the latest in a string of hundreds.
And Bob, all that shaking is causing some anxiety for folks.
And it shows that while the rate of quakes is slowing, we'll likely continue to have aftershocks for a while.
The 3.3 magnitude around 10:15 this morning was among over 30 aftershocks just Thursday.
The floor jumped and lifted for a few seconds.
There have been more than 560 aftershocks in just the last 8 days. Most are too weak to be felt, but the 32 that reached a magnitude 3 or higher,
definitely very nerve-wracking.
Thursday's quakes moved east and closer to the surface, according to Keith Coper, who says it's common to feel on edge.
It comes as a consequence of God knocking us down. And that's the way I look at it. As I think that we need to allow God to knock us down so that we don't have to get to a place where we're so lifted up that somebody else has to do it.
Yeah, you talk about the examples that you're using before, people who have fallen into certain things. And it's just made me think of, anybody who said, I'm not an adulterer, I'm not a murderer, Jesus just raised the bar. Said, if you've ever, hated your brother in your heart, you're guilty.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as I lose that perspective, when I start thinking that I'm innocent, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. He had the right to do with people as he chose, which is often the case in cultures where human life becomes devalued. Sometimes people don't understand why the issue or the controversy or discussion between creation and evolution matters. But the reason why it matters is because evolution says we came from nothing, we are nothing, and we will return to nothing. So that human life, if you're true to your beliefs as an evolutionist, has no value, no worth. There is no sense of right and wrong. There is no morality. Even those who promote evolution argue that the reason people are moral is because we find out it's the best way to survive. But the simple fact is that people behave in immoral ways even knowing that they're self-destructive. I've never met an alcoholic or a drug addict who didn't know he was destroying himself, but he just couldn't stop because of his addictive passions and the fact that he preferred to numb his emotions rather than have to face them. So that the idea that people would choose to have a value system that says you have no value is one of the most confusing things to me in all the world. What makes creationism If no other, if you don't even give it a scientific argument, it's the fact that it alone puts value on you. When it says that you're made in the image of God, you become valuable inherently and purposely. Your life takes on a nobility. And it's a nobility that we feel called to live up to. I love it in the Chronicles of Narnia where Lewis was talking about King Aslan and how about that we were all descended from Adam and Eve, who were kings and lords of ancient times. And he said, based upon that alone, it became incumbent to us to live noble lives. It became incumbent for us to live noble lives. But at the same time, you talk about the tension. I think that one of the interesting things about the world and the universe is that the universe exists in a balanced tension, that even the atomic particles are existing within a tension that holds them together. And I think that a life without that kind of tension, we want to live without stress, but stress is important. Yeah. It's a critical part. I mean, that's why we exercise, to stress our bodies, to keep them healthy. And the same thing is true, that God is always testing and stressing us because he wants us to continue growing so that we continue to stay healthy. And
yeah, I think the challenging thing for people watching this would just be, I think that people are being really naive if they don't think that there's anything in their life that could become an idol. They may hear you say, it could be marriage, it could be your kids, it could be this. Yeah. But there's something down there. And like you said, it's usually a good thing. And maybe even people seem shocked, but maybe just your ritual of coming to church every week, that can become the idol. Maybe it's just the time that you've carved out. It's supposed to be good to have, our devotional time in the morning, but maybe that can become something that you worship the time more than you actually worship the God that you're spending time with. So, I think that's the challenge. And I think that to identify those things really requires us to really be still and allow God to show us. And I think that's one thing I think that's happening during this time right now, is because before we had everything kind of just taken out from underneath of us, we're so busy. Our schedules are, planners are so full. We don't have time to sit still before the Lord. And as you said, I think in one of your devotions, or maybe it was last week, people have lots of time. No, there's time, but I think there's still that desire of we're finding other reasons.
Unless you're a mom of small kids, you have no time at all.
It's true. Well, you closed out your message with a quote from your book, and I love it. It's something that I've remembered throughout the years. But you said, if the difference that Jesus makes doesn't make a difference, what difference does it make?